Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I've been in a bag all night.
And I'm Gary, and today we're going to review and discuss Audition, which came out in 1999 from director Takeshi Miike. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for Audition?
Okay, the story follows Aoyama. I think that's right, and my Japanese isn't brilliant. He plays a father who has lost his wife and is living with his son. His son convinces him that he should start dating again, and as he feels a bit old, he's not entirely sure how he goes about it. He talks to one of his friends who's a film producer who gives him the idea about auditioning a woman to play the part or be his wife in the future. He starts to audition all these women and comes across one that really captures his eye. He madly falls in love with her, but then later realizes that there might be something slightly wrong with this one.
Director Takeshi Miike is a world-famous director.
Yeah.
He is synonymous within the horror genre, especially within the Asian film of the horror movie. And it's pretty much for his exploitation films, if you will,
right.
They're uber violent, uber gory, and incredibly over the top. If you look at his IMDb page, he has over 100 directorial sort of credits.
Yeah.
Not all of them were theatrical releases, and Audition was probably one of his first most successful theatrical releases, especially overseas as well. Some of his other films include Ichi the Killer, Three Extremes, 13 Assassins, Visitor Q, which is an absolute nightmarish film dealing with scenes of incest and necrophilia. We also have films like Dead or Alive, which are just uber violent, sort of Yakuza, Japanese and Chinese gangs just tearing each other to pieces on the streets. Takeshi Miike's films are uber violent, and in interviews with him, he often explains that he had a very suppressed childhood. That for most of his childhood, he had these angry feelings, and yet when he would be being bullied or being, pushed around, he'd never throw a punch.
Right.
He kind of repressed it. And he's always said that every film he's made has kind of been him throwing back all those punches. Which is why a lot of people say that they are affected by Takeshi Miike's movies.
I'm not really massively affected by his movies. I've always thought he was an awesome director, but that's about as far as, he is. He's just a director who makes some really, really good films and some not so great films. And in 1999, Audition came out. I think I remember a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, you've got to see this film. The sequence at the end it's just so disgusting." And I never got around to it. I was watching a hell of a lot of films at the time, and Audition just didn't get onto my list.
I actually watched Audition early, sort of 2000, and I'll be honest, my first viewing of the film back then, I turned it off. And I've always said I've not been a huge fan of sort of Asian horror movies anyway.
Yeah.
And this film bored me to tears. But of course, at the time, I wasn't really old enough or mature enough to understand some of the themes and some of the things that were going on in this film, which we're going to have a look at now.
Yeah. The film itself is filmed very well. The acting is brilliant. But for me, 17 years or 16 years after this film came out, it's lost a hell of a lot of its appeal. Like I said, at the time, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, this sequence at the end is absolutely disturbing." For an almost 2-hour movie, the last 10 minutes, if that's what you're waiting for, is a hell of a chore to get to. I love Asian cinema. I love all cinema, but Asian cinema always stands out for me because it's always doing something different to the Americans, shall we say. I don't want to be racist or anything, but American films can be pretty fucking boring after you see the same old shit over and over again. The Asian cinema, they are literally just going all out. You know, like we said, you get one film with Yakuza gangsters going up against, you know, cops and cops infiltrating the gangs. You've got zombies and vampires and monsters and this, that, and the next thing all coming over. So you're always just like, oh wow, what's the next big thing? And Audition is just a reverse Fatal Attraction.
Well, the film's opening is very dark straight away, especially when he loses his wife, and you follow his son coming into the hospital with the flowers and the things that he's brought for his mother. We do cut then several years later. The boy's a lot older, and we see him, and he feels like a washed up old man.
Yeah,
and so he goes for these auditions to go and find him the perfect wife, and so already we're sort of seeing the darker side of this character, but also it's kind of a reflection of the darker side of all men in terms of how they would try and find their perfect partner, whether it would be dating sites, which are a dime a dozen all over the place now, or something which is, you know, from the 1999 is kind of pretty seedy and pretty horrible, especially considering, you know, he gets to choose what he wants. It's like going into a catalogue store and literally having them all there and going, I'm going to try that one out and that one out and that one out. And it was kind of a little bit repulsive, but at the same time, you become very sympathetic with this main character, especially coming off the back of that introduction.
Yeah.
And that is what I like about this film from the get-go, is that you need to care for your main character. If you do not care about him, the rest of the film, you'll tune out. You'll just, you know...
Well, this is it. I did care about him. You know, it was very harsh that he'd lost his wife. But you start to find out that he's done very well for himself. He's made his own business. He's looked after his son all these years. He's doing very well. It's not like he goes out and sleeps with prostitutes every night. You know, he's not blowing money on alcohol and drugs to you know, hide the feelings that he holds for his wife. He's just a man getting on with his life, and it's only because he's having these discussions with his son, because his son is getting to the age of meeting girls, that his son's kind of like, Dad, you know, you need to do something for yourself, because I'm not always going to be here. And that's what, you know, I started to really care about. I cared about the relationship between father and son. He does go on these auditions, but he only goes on the auditions because his film producer friend Yoshikawa, who's actually a very famous actor, actually, who's worked with people like Ridley Scott and Quentin Tarantino in a lot of films overseas. You know, Yoshikawa is the film producer and says, oh yeah, fuck it, we'll just do film auditions. You know, we'll pretend we're making a movie and you can get all these girls in and invite them and, you know, talk to them. And I was just like, you know, I didn't get seedy from it. You know, it was a bit like a speed dating thing where they're literally just coming in.
I mean, the fact that he was asking perhaps the more reserved questions, or not even saying anything at all. His friend was asking them whether they would have sex on film, how many times they've done it before, and he's like, yeah, you're no good for this role, and he'll turn to his agent and go, get her number, we'll take her later.
Yeah, but that's Yoshikawa. That was the industry works. That was the film producer. You know, he is, you know, trying to do it for his business. Aoyama, though, he's looking for a girl, and he's infatuated by the main girl. As soon as he sees her file, he starts to be pulled in by her story. And, you know, he sees, you know, the back of her head, and he's like, oh my God, I can't wait to see her. Is she as pretty as she is in person? I loved all that
anticipation where he was infatuated with her from the moment he found her sort of file.
Yeah, but the issue
the audition.
Yeah, but the issue I had is obviously that's the process of the film. You know, he was going to be infatuated with her. You know, it would have been a lot better if he had seen her and maybe two others. you know, and she'd been in this mix, and maybe as the film developed, she'd end up taking these other girls out who'd mysteriously disappeared, so he's only left with her. That would have been a nice pretext. But it was like, oh my god, she's absolutely amazing, I've got to have her, you know. Oh my god, I've now met her in person, she's absolutely amazing, I've got to meet her, you know, I've got to go out and have meals with her, I've got to go out and do this.
It's love. It can kind of become absolutely obsessive to that.
In a film that works. That doesn't work in real life.
No, that is real life.
No.
When people fall in love with each other, they obsess with each other.
Some people do. He didn't. He wasn't obsessed that he had to find out where she lived. He didn't search and investigate into her until like an hour and 10 minutes into the film. Everything building up to that was them building this relationship. And every time the film flicked back to Asami, she was sat in a room with a bag. So I'm already not liking her. I didn't like her at the start because obviously I know the film. I haven't already seen it, but I know the pretext of the film. She's on the fucking front cover of the DVD, you know. I knew something was up with her, and then you see her sat there, so I'm like, okay, so I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. It's not even like she's luring him into a trap. That was another issue. It wasn't like she was luring him to a trap. Like you said, he's kind of chasing her, but she's cutting him off. She's not answering the phone. He doesn't know where she lives. So he has to literally go find her an hour and 10 minutes into the film. And this is a 2-hour film, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours. And I'm like, so I've literally got to wait for the last 5 minutes until something happens?
Stuff happens, excuse me, Ian, but stuff happens throughout the film. We get to watch this character evolve and change. We get to see what he's going through. And we also get to follow him through a pretty nightmarish landscape of obsessive sort of, emotional sort of wealth that he's missing out on. He explains how lonely he feels throughout the film. And there's very much a message of loneliness throughout the film.
Yes,
and
okay.
And so, of course, seeing her just sort of waiting at the phone for him, and despite the fact that there are some odd things that were hinted to going on in the background, you know, it's a romance film. It's a love story. And it's a very odd one. Well, it is, because for 80% of the film, that's what it is. It is a drama. When somebody says to you, this is a horror film, and you wait an hour and a half and nothing really horrific happens, minus we get a scene where he is trying to investigate, and he goes to a motel. Is it a motel or a bar?
He goes to one place to find her, and it's all boarded up, and he goes in there and finds an old man playing a piano with some busted fucking legs, who turns out to be Asami's stepdad, and we get some flashbacks about how the stepdad used to torture her as a small child. And then it flicks to him going to the bar where she supposedly worked at, which we had already been told the bar had shut down. So leading up to this point, his friend is telling Aoyama, don't phone her, don't contact her until I found out all this stuff. And this is the issue. Like I said, a lot of the issue I have with American films is how stupid characters can be, and that's why I go to Asian cinema, because I'm just like, maybe they're not as stupid over there. No, they are. Some of the stories are just as stupid, where the guy goes, I'm so madly in love with this woman, I don't care what's going on in her life, I need to find her so I can see her. She's a crazy psycho.
Some people just got to learn the hard way.
邦楽二課に柴田ってディレクターいなかった。いやいや、正確に言えば今はいないってことだ。で、この柴田って男な、1年半前に行方不明になってんだよ。 失踪したきりなんだよ。
I don't think it was stupid. Well, it is stupid behavior looking at it from the outside, but when you're in that position, when you're in there, you can't convince them of anything because whatever they're feeling, they're going to go with.
No,
so.
that is true, but it takes me back to the point where you said, okay, he does say he's lonely, and as the film develops, he starts to become,
happy.
No, selfish.
True.
He
Which
starts to become
is,
selfish
in a
because
sense, it fuels his happiness.
At the start of the film, he's wanting to just, look after his son. But his son says, no, Dad, go out there. And so he starts to do these things for himself, and he starts to go after this girl. And he starts to not care about anybody else apart from this girl. Then you start to find out that she only wants him to love her and nobody else. That's impossible.
That is impossible. That kind of exclusive sort of relationship is going to end badly for anybody.
It's going to end badly.
But she has come from an abusive childhood and an abusive past, and so trying to understand her psychologically, she is very messed up.
I don't think, but fucked up.
Incredibly so, and so but she sort of will blame society. Especially, Japanese society in this instance, for the state of her being.
Yeah.
Which
you don't get. I mean, I didn't get until the last 20 minutes of the film. Everything building up to that, like I said, yes, she's had an abusive childhood. Yes, it's pushed her over the edge. Yes, she's looking for relationships, but as the film starts to develop, we realise that every time a guy gets close, she gives them this question or this challenge. Love me and nobody else. And the moment they fuck up, she dismembers them and stuffs them into a bag. Now, my issue with this was I was really confused as the film was developed. I'm confused of, is she looking for somebody to only love her and then she'll be happy? Or does she purposely go out of her way to find men who can accomplish this challenge so that she can feed the darkness, as she calls it? She can feed the darkness inside her, which has enveloped her now because she can't do ballet.
Well, there is a very intimate moment sort of midway through the film where she sort of, it starts off slightly awkward where he's like, oh, we can go here for dessert, and we can go here on the harbour.
He's being a gentleman.
He's trying to be a gentleman, and she strips off all of her clothes and gets into the bed and says, come here. And he's just like, okay. He starts taking off his clothes and she's like, no, not yet. I want you to see me first. Right, okay. And that's when she first explains how she was burnt.
Yeah, she was scarred by her stepfather with incense sticks.
And throughout the film, we do have flashes to this, and it's very peculiar and quite odd, because we see her sort of willingly reveal her legs or her skirt, and she opens herself up to her uncle, both as a child and as a grown woman in these flashes, and it's the whole film starts to take a dreamlike atmosphere from this intimate moment onwards, where they're in the bed together. They sort of fumble and roll onto the floor, and then it's the next morning, and when he wakes up, she's gone. And from there, it becomes very hard to tell the difference between what's reality and what's not anymore because of the dreamlike nature of the film. He keeps slipping into, these flashes or these visions.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, is he awake? Is he dreaming? How would he know this information?
After the first hour, I'm like waiting for something. the most interesting thing that happened in that first hour was her taking her clothes off. But obviously, with the way that the way it was filmed and the shadows and the lights and stuff like that, you don't really see anything. And she climbs into bed. They have that little moment, and then she's gone. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, where's she fucking gone now? So for the next 20 minutes, Aoyama is now wandering around looking for her, because like you said, he's infatuated with her. He's infatuated with her now. He was being a perfect gentleman up to that point. Then they had sex, and he's like, it's like the greatest sex I've ever had in my life, even better than my wife who gave me a son. You know, I've got to find this woman so that I can, what are you going to do with this woman? You're going to marry her? You're going to settle down? You're going to have children? You're going to have a nice family? Or do you just want to fuck the shit out of her? Make up your mind, because I don't know what you want from her. I don't even think he knows what he wants from her. He just wants her, but he can't completely have her. So he's failed her task after the first hour. That should have been the first time, you know, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Because, like I said, he goes around, he investigates all these things. He sees the horrific stuff, the tongue on the floor and the fingers in the ear. And it's like, okay, right. And as like I said, we keep seeing this bag in the room with her. So you're like, there's something in that bag. But it's not until the last 45 minutes when Aoyama is drugged that he knows everything.
Asami. やめて。いけません。ここはやっぱり女が支えてやらないと。くたびれてしまうんだから。
そうだわよ。
How the fuck does he get drugged and immediately get flashes of what she's actually doing?
I interpreted that as that while he was laid there drugged, she was just telling him everything that happened. In his mind, while he's drugged out, is just piecing all this together in some horrific nightmare.
Yeah, I thought that. That was me telling me, justifying the film.
But that's what I also like about this film is that it's not, you know, your standard American film which explains every plot detail to you so that you cannot pick it apart. This film just goes, what the hell? And, you know, these things and these things and these things, they're all connected, they're all related, they all have emotional impacts on different characters at different points. You piece it together, how you describe how you feel after this film. Because it's the sort of film that will linger on afterwards. It'll let you think about relationships as a warning as well.
You've said this before in other films that you shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do your own thing with the film. The film should develop it.
No, there should be every type of film.
Yes, there should be every type of film. And in 1999 that this film came out, it was probably done really well. It was probably done really well, and the ending was probably absolutely shocking. And, you know, the same could be said for The Exorcist when The Exorcist came out.
Well, it still is.
But now, present day, modern day, as time has gone on and films have developed, certain films that look really good back in the day don't look so good now. And
I beg to differ because this torture sequence, I've seen all the Saw movies, I've seen all the Final Destination movies, but when this sequence started, I was tapping my leg. I was tapping the side. I wanted it to end. I was immediately uncomfortable.
It's because you don't watch a lot of Asian cinema. I've seen a hell of a lot of stuff.
I've seen
worse than this. So the filming and editing on the sequence was done really well to hold back. You only see her put in like a couple of acupuncture needles.
Yeah, but it's the creepy factor of her saying deeper, 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 deeper. As she puts them in that sort of really high-pitched voice.
That did nothing.
It was the fact that she put them in his eyeballs, in his sockets.
If you apply acupuncture needles to the perfect place, it doesn't hurt.
Well, this was she's hit him with the drug so that she's aggravating all of his nerve endings.
Yes, but think this is
he's still paralyzed.
But think this is a film. He's actually an actor. He's not being paid to be He's not being paid.
What are you talking
to
about?
be
This is
blinded.
a scene in the film.
Yes,
not actors right now.
Yes, I'm talking about the scene in the film where obviously applying the acupuncture needles to the parts of the body. Like I said, you can do it in such a way that it looks bad, but it's not really. And that's what I got from this, was that it looks bad. To somebody like you, it looked bad and it made you cringe. To me, I was like, next, I'm waiting for the horrific torture. And yes, the horrific torture comes when she gets her piano wire out and she's like, you can't go anywhere. I'm going to take your feet off.
It's a fantastic sequence, and it's done without any music, which would just override any sort of tension that's really happening here. The fact that it's played as realistically as possible, and the fact that she has now just become this insane monster who's avenging all of womankind.
No.
And the actors just sell it very well. It's incredibly creepy and incredibly unsettling to get through.
I'll give you that.
And I just was... The sequence only being 10 minutes long, it felt a lot longer. And it was really jarring. And what is fascinating is that it keeps cutting back to his... you wondering whether he's passed out and he's fallen asleep again, and he wakes up and he's kissing his feet.
Yeah.
And you're just like, so what's a dream? Is it still a dream? Whose dream is this? And then he wakes up again, and the torture continues, and it's just, oh my god. It's a very memorable torture sequence, and I can understand why the film was so memorable for it.
Fuck no. No. The last 10 minutes of this film. If the last 10 minutes of this film is the most memorable part, right?
The last 10 minutes of this film is so memorable because of the rest of the film being so superbly building up to it.
No. The last 10 minutes of the film shouldn't be the most memorable part. Like you said, the whole film should have been building up to this. So like you said, she has been a crazed psycho monster throughout the film. She's not trying to defend herself or all of womankind.
Yes, she is.
She explains to him. She was tortured by her stepmother, by her stepfather. She broke her hip. She wants to be loved, but she doesn't really, because she enjoys torturing people. She is a psychopathic monster from the start of the film, luring men into a trap for no other reason apart from the fact she enjoys what she does. She enjoys putting needles into people's eyes and body parts and drugging them and sawing off their feet and killing fucking dogs. She killed the fucking dog a little bit. That dog did nothing to her. Nothing. Was that her defending all of female dogs' kind? No. She's just a psychopathic torturer who fucking kills indiscriminately.
Yeah, it's a very extreme reaction from a very extreme society where women, and like almost every society, are being treated incredibly poorly, sexual objects.
Right, okay.
And so the fact that this man has treated her as a sort of sexual object from the get-go...
No.
What?
No, he hasn't treated her like a sexual object.
Yes, he has. He was
an absolute gentleman. Oh, yeah, okay. He picked her out of her catalogue because he didn't know what he was doing about dating, so he went with somebody else's idea. That was his first mistake. He went with somebody else's idea of how to pick up women. The second mistake he made was obviously going for the one who seemed the most perfect, which we all know is going to end just badly. He then follows her, takes her to dinner and all this other stuff because he's trying to be a gentleman and he's trying to build a relationship with her, and she dragged him along. He didn't force her into bed with her. She took her clothes off and told him to come to her. That's right. Am I right? Yes. He did that. He didn't want to have sex with her. He was making conversation. We should go to a meal here. We should go to a cafe. No, I'm going to take off my clothes and I'm going to lure you into my trap, said the spider to the fly. And he's the fly. She then disappears for the next hour while he's searching for her because he's in love with her. He's not objectifying her. He wants to, do what men do with women, and that's worship them. She flips it though because he's got a son. She flips because he's still in love with his wife. Well, fuck you, bitch. If you weren't murdering every fucking guy you were coming across, maybe you'd be in a picture like that with your own son. But no, because my stepmother and my stepfather stuck incense sticks on my leg when I was a girl and I did nothing about it, like go to the fucking police, I'm going to take these ideas and use the darkness inside me to saw people's feet off. The feet cutting sequence was nothing compared to Misery's sequence, where she hits his feet with the sledgehammer. The Saw sequence, where he fucking saws his own foot off, or smashes his own foot with the fucking toilet lid. 17 years later, this foot cutting sequence was so just boring that when her little death at the end, let me get to the death. It was actually one of my favourite scenes. Yeah, she sneaks up behind the son who's come home unexpectedly. Unexpectedly? Bullshit. We had 10 minutes at the end of this film. He was either going to end up in a bag or he was going to get saved. The son comes home. We have a bit of a dream sequence. We know it's a dream sequence because, well, that would be such a shit film if he wakes up and he has both feet. She chases the son around the house and the son does one kick. It was amazing. One kick and she flies down the stairs and breaks her neck. I mean, I didn't even understand the angle of how she broke her neck. She flew backwards, which meant she should have just landed on her back, but she landed on her head and then lied there, talking to the main guy, and then the film was over. Are you finished? Yeah, I'm finished. I'm sorry that you haven't seen enough torturistic films with fucking Asian cinema to understand that that last 10-minute sequence does not justify an hour and 45 minutes.
I think that this film is a dark masterpiece. From the cinematography, from the performances, from everything about the dreamlike nature of it, the stylistic nature of the camera work, the editing, the lighting. It's mesmerizing to watch. Going through this emotional journey with these characters is a minefield, but then so is relationships. This is just an exaggerated form which Takeshi Miike does with all of his work. So it becomes no surprise to see these small things that people feel just exploded in gruesome form. Yeah, okay, it's not as gritty and horrible to look at watching someone's leg get pulled apart. Yeah, it's dated by nearly 20 years, granted, but that doesn't matter. That's not what the film is about. That there is just its punctuation right at the end. And it's sort of, a lot of people had to walk out of the cinema because they were too queasy. Not because of the actual torture sequence itself, but because of the emotional impact it's having come back off the back of the rest of the film. I definitely recommend Audition. It is, as I've said, it is a dark horror masterpiece. I think, you're probably right that it is overrated. But it was overrated for a very good reason. And I think that this film will continue to live on. It will continue to shock people when they watch it. Not just because of the torture scene at the end, but because of everything that's built up to that torture scene at the end. I definitely recommend the movie. I don't particularly have a memorable scene because the whole film is just an experience.
My favourite scene was the audition sequences. I thought that was really well done, and it made me feel that, as a background to this film, this is probably what they did when they were looking for a female to play the main female character. So they sat these girls down, they asked them, and they just edited the sequence, and it looked like they had a lot of fun. They did ask a lot of questions, and it was just two guys, talking to a bunch of girls. Unlike Gary, no, this film isn't memorable, really. Like I said, for me personally, a lot of people came up to me and said, you're going to love this film because of the torture sequence at the end. For an hour and 45 minutes, I sat there waiting for this thing.
That was your mistake.
Yeah, I should have just skipped to the last 10 minutes. I should have just skipped to the last 10 minutes.
Watch a torture sequence, which means nothing, just for the sake of watching a torture sequence.
Which meant
I'll watch a snuff movie if I want to watch a torture sequence.
Nothing, because I was so confused, Gary. I was so confused about what was going on. You say,
Well, all the
you
clues
say,
were there. This is
you
a very
say-
subtle
you
movie
say-
that doesn't just bombastically tell you everything.
You say it's very subtle, but like I said, it's a reverse fatal attraction. He's got no wife to worry about. He's looking for somebody to spend the rest of his life with, and he just happens to meet somebody who we know from the start, or from the first couple of sequences we see, is a complete psycho. Okay? As the film ticks on, yes, you will be at the screen telling him not to go down that corridor, and not to open that door, and not to ask questions about her, but he's going to. That is the point of the movie. He is going to. That's it. Everything you don't want him to do, he is going to do, because that's the film. Takeshi Miike has made a lot of really good films, and some of them that aren't so good. This is one of those films, like I said, that just like The Exorcist and a lot of films, got a lot of bad press in the first day, but now you could look back on it and go, meh, really? What is the big deal? If you are a fan of Japanese cinema or an Asian cinema and stuff like that, and you have never seen Audition, yes, go and watch it. It's one to tick off the 101 films to see before you die kind of list. At the same time, to actual general filmgoers out there who will look for a film to watch, don't watch this. You will waste an hour and 45 minutes of your life for a 10-minute sequence at the end that, if you're looking for gruesome torture shit, you could probably find better shit somewhere else. If you just want to see her cut his foot off, find it on fucking YouTube, because everything else doesn't build up to it.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.